Okay.
All right, Matt, when you're ready.
Actually, is she ready? Is she ready to go?
Yeah, well, that's mine. Just
Yeah. I now call to order the public hearing of October 24th, 2022. The time is 6:45. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Orr,
here.
Member Volt,
Here.
Member Shora,
Here.
Member Waring,
Here.
Member McLeister,
Here.
Member Matheny,
Here.
Member Wyrick is absent, 6 present.
Thank you, Ben. At this time, we will begin the public comment of the portion of the public hearing. Our topic tonight is ordinance 76-2022. Ben, would you please read the title for the record?
An ordinance authorizing the vacation of 1, all of a 10-foot wide alley between 415 Portage Street Northwest and the associated garage to the south. 2, all of an 11-foot wide alley between 401 Portage Street Northwest and 341 Portage Street Northwest. And 3, all of an 11-foot wide alley between 337 Portage Street Northwest and 329 Portage Street Northwest, located within the municipal corporate limits of the city of North Canton.
Thank you, Ben. I think that's a good summary. Nothing has changed that I know of from this. So at this time, is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this? Which, yeah, go ahead and ask the question. That's fine.
I don't see 339 listed there. That tiny little.
First of all, I need his name because I don't know this poor job.
We need your name and address, sir.
Yeah, you might as well just, you can get on the podium.
What do you stand? Podium.
Yeah. Kenneth Patel. My parents own the house and they have passed away recently. It's in the process of state, but still. 339 has a tiny little 6x8 parcel listed on the map, and I don't see the address anywhere in there. So I'm wondering if that is just an oversight or if it's just not needed.
The addresses are just being used to identify what the alleys are, because the alleys don't have names. So the fact that your address does not appear in the title of the ordinance, you'd still
Okay.
get the 6x8 square.
Okay, I'm just making sure because it didn't show up, and I was like, all right, that was it.
Okay,
Nothing.
thank you.
Just double checking.
Anyone else wanting to speak in favor tonight? Okay, at this time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Okay, final opportunity for anyone to speak on ordinance 76-2022.
Move the hearing be closed.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I'll have a, oh, that's done. I now call to order the committee of the whole meeting of October 24th, 2022. The time is 7 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Matheny.
Here.
Member McLeister.
Here.
Member Warren.
Here.
Member Stroya.
Here.
Member Volt.
Here.
Member Orr.
Here.
Member Wyrick is absent, 6 present.
Okay, let's start off with community.
Wait,
and
move
economic-
to
Yeah.
excuse.
Oh.
member-
Yeah, motion.
member Wyrick.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Daryl?
Okay, our process on allowing permeable pavers to be a parking service is prepared to move to its next step, and that will be to set a public hearing. The clerk has reviewed the calendar and believes that November 28th is a date for that hearing. And so I propose that. I don't think we have any other issues that have come up since. Mr. Bureau, you're,
Yeah, I don't know if that will work.
okay,
May want to go later. I think you're going to get into some discussion later tonight about the calendar.
okay. Well, let's do this then. What do we have, what do we show for our first opportunity in December?
Guys haven't formally adopted that calendar yet, but theoretically it'd be December 5th.
Mr. President, is that a likely date?
That sounds good with me.
All right,
Does that work for
let me do
everybody?
this, and I will make a motion that we set December 5th at 6:45. Time for the public hearing on this matter.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And you're up on 3B.
Item 2, okay. We have an opportunity, potential opportunity, annex property, which is in the northwest corner of the city at the intersection of Apple Grove and Pittsburgh Road. There are approximately 11 parcels, I believe. These are owned by the county. And the administration tonight is going to ask us for authorization to submit a request for annexation. As many of you know, our goal here, through a variety of processes, has been to grow the commercial real estate base in the city. It's jobs in the city. We'll discuss this later this evening with the Director of Finance, perhaps. But it's jobs in the city and the income tax that they generate that pay for the lion's share of city operations, public safety, services, etc. This property is zoned commercial. It would remain commercially zoned. And if it was in the city, any owner of that property could avail him or herself of our economic development assistance. That might enable that property owner to achieve a higher level of development than might occur under other circumstances. Patrick, do you have anything to add at this point?
No, I don't.
Okay, there is a map in your packets. The administration is simply seeking authorization tonight to do this. So I would make a motion that we authorize the administration to proceed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Finance and property, Stephanie.
Okay. This is just a resolution of accepting the amounts and rates determined by the Budget Commission to put our information on the levy. We do this just every year, and if we have something that needs to go on, and it's just pretty routine. Any issues, concerns? If not, I move to adopt.
Vote will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And rubbish. No, not rubbish,
Nope.
sorry. Ordinance and rules, John.
Well, this is a little housekeeping, it's an ordinance approving and adopting the extension of an automated method for portioning the Stark County Undivided Local Government Fund for 2023 through 2027, authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton to execute said agreement and declaring the same to be an emergency. I think it went down about 2%.
0.2.
0.2% down, so. Pretty self-explanatory. In your packet, you probably have one of these, so. I'll make a motion that we go ahead and approve this on an emergency basis. I think it's due tomorrow.
I don't think quite that soon.
No? I'll make a motion,
What will say?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, utilities formerly rubbish.
Formerly rubbish. All right. Well, what we have before us here is, it's an update to the solid waste management plan. This is done periodically. This is the summary draft. There was a period of time where municipalities could weigh in on this, and that was back in August. And so we're coming up on the point between October 3rd and January 1st is the period where it needs to be ratified. All municipalities either have to create or join some sort of a solid waste management district. Great call out by our clerk of council here. One item of note, which was kind of interesting, within our Stark, Tusk, and Wayne solid waste district, actually 53% of rubbish was recycled and 47% was trash. I thought that was kind of neat, but I don't know. Did you have anything else to add, Patrick? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So okay. So with that, I move that we had
53% rubbish, you said?
53% was recycled. So
We are consistently one of the highest.
It is impressive.
Canton is very high in recycling, and we do receive a grant, a recycling grant to use monies.
very cool. So, well, I would move that we adopt
What will second?
or put on the agenda. Excuse me. So,
What will second?
All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Going to the budget items. We want, I mean, how do we want to propose? There's no set place for this.
Admin has a presentation.
What's that?
Admin has a presentation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the presentation. That's fine. Okay.
You want to do the numbers first? What do you want to do? All right, we'll do the presentation first. Okay, well, thank you, council, chair of the committee, for this opportunity to present the 2023 mayor's budget for the city of North Canton. And this has been a long process. As many of you know, and we have, each year we improve upon that process. Not to say that last year's wasn't good, but there's always a focus here to tweak and to make it even better. We've involved council early on in discussions about this. We started with the finance department earlier in the process as well. And we think that we've developed a much more comprehensive understanding of what we were trying to do by all the departments together. We briefed our department heads collectively. They're all part of the team who should all know what each other's budget is, so they understand where they fit. All right, so the focus of this budget is people. It's people. And, you know, some of the stuff that we're going to get into here with the slideshow presentation talks about the journey that we've gone on in the last 5 years. last 5 years, basically since I've been here, and what the situation was when I got here. And, it shouldn't be a surprise, but in many respects, from a management standpoint, it was a train wreck. And it's taken us 5 years to dig out, to get to a point where we can accomplish things that the council and the mayor and the community have asked us to work towards. If you don't have the people, you can't do it. And I don't just mean bodies, that you just hire bodies and have bodies. I mean quality employees. People that understand our vision and our mission statement. We'll do more about that in a bit. And those that don't have been, kindly shown the exit on the highway where they need to go. We don't have time for that. We are too small of a service organization to be able to have the luxury of non-performers. So part of our job has been to introduce these levels of accountability and responsibility. And that if you fail in that regard, we've instituted some standard human resource moves, things that we haven't had here before, but a performance improvement plan. We've a couple of those to try to help people become better employees. But ultimately, if they're unwilling to engage and follow the directive, then it's time to look for new people. So we think that we've right-sized our employees over the last 5 years as far as moving, sifting through those individuals and getting us to the point where we are really able to execute that. But in spite of that, there is still always more to do. There's more that you want done. You would like, more curb and gutter projects. Curb and gutter projects are expensive to outsource. But for a time, that's all this city did was outsource it because they didn't believe in labor. And we found that with the right people and the right management, the right incentives, if you will, through their contract, just being appreciated as employees, that there is a willingness and a desire to put in a whole bunch of different things. And it saves us a lot of money and we can get more done. We've acquired the curb gutter making machine. That a couple of years back, 2 years ago. And then last year we moved into the paving machine. Well, you'll see in our budget tonight, we're asking for more individuals in that department. Because, how many we have right now? 7?
In the street department?
Yeah, 7. It takes, 4 or 5 people to run, each machine. I can't have the same people running the machines simultaneously. Can't be in 2 places at once, but I would like to get there. I'd like to be able to have people that curb and gutter machine could be going down in Ward 4, but the street paving machine can be going off in Ward 2 at the same time. That's not unreasonable to ask. We're moving in that direction. Same thing with storm sewers. So we know we've had the flood of all floods so far in 2022. And there is more responsibility to exercise, plans to deal with flood control and catch basin repairs and the like, and the list goes on. Guess the same people that are doing that street, the same people doing the storm sewer. That's different than sanitary sewer, storm sewer. So again, the need for additional folks. Police department is being, called upon to provide additional school resource officers. We have 2 new schools being built, and we should say that that is a special collaboration, if you will, a dialogue maybe that the mayor Wilder has had with school officials that didn't exist before. Didn't exist. Why does that matter? Well, that school that was in Greentown, all those people are now going to be employees inside the city limits. Didn't have to be. If we had continued our hostilities and not worked together, chances are that one of those schools could have been built outside the city. It's very important, this role that we are being asked to help fulfill. So the agreement that we have with the schools at the present time is they fund 75% of that SRO cost, and we pick up the other 25%. Because basically, 3 months out of the year, they're at school, so we will use those folks in our police department. But there are still some things that, not trying to sound, the alarm bells, if you will, but these are things that we did talk about. And they really need to have the conversation with the community about a couple particular areas that are in need of a plan, particularly as it relates to fire and EMS. So that's the most important one that I want to talk about. I'm not going to talk about everything. I'm going to share this with Gina and Catherine on these things, but fire and EMS. We are, most appreciative to the voters of this community that have, approved the levies that we had asked for. We had said that those funds would replace monies that were being drained out of the general fund to support fire and EMS operations. We have fulfilled that obligation, and it is creating opportunities for the rest of the departments to grow. With an $8 million general fund, same thing, right? Same thing. General fund budget, and previously, 1.3 million coming out of that general fund budget to support fire and EMS operations doesn't leave much money left to handle all the other departments and the other needs that are necessary. So that's why with the replacement of that, or those levies successfully, we are looking at making this that people budget. But the model that we have with the fire and EMS department, in my opinion, no longer properly serves the community. It's a model from an era gone by where we were, solely a volunteer fire department, and then we kind of transitioned into a part-time paid volunteer fire department to a hybrid department where fire and EMS are together, and you have to have all these degrees and designations and the like. And without, any studies being done along the way, it's kind of put us in a position now where those people are hard to find. It's hard to find those folks and get them in. And then we're competing with everybody else that wants to get them in, and other cities that pay probably a lot more. We know that we took a run at this a couple years ago about a new building. It's not just about a new building, about having something new. It's that operating out of two locations is not cost effective. It's costing the city too much money to run two locations. So just as an example, so a call goes out for a fire service that they respond out of station 1. And people leave that building and go respond to the auto accident or whatever it is that requires those vehicles from that location to leave. Well, now there's nobody left there. So we send people maybe down from Station 2 on 7th Street to cover that. And then we're short on people on Station 2, so we do a call out. People to come in and replace the people at 2. And then it's anybody and everybody that comes. It's an all hands on deck call. And this is a very expensive way to run a fire EMS department. So we think that we've reached a point in talking with the chief that he feels that the time is at hand that we need to be to get very serious about the direction we're going and get there in all due speed. To that end, I am engaging an independent national consultant that studies fire department, EMS department operations. And the scope of service that we are engaging with will look at everything. It will look at these locations. It'll look at if we built a new one at a new location. We think that they're largely going to support the where we believe a new location of a consolidated building would be. We know we've had some work done by the county. They've supported that conclusion as well. But this hybrid model, the part-time, the nature of our calls, what type of calls do we get? Well, the number of calls that we are running on a monthly basis out of that department is exceeding 300 a month. 10 years ago, it was half that number. Yet our staffing is relatively the same, but our overtime is killing. So what is the nature of those calls? We've done some analysis on the nature of those calls. And the vast majority, let's say a high percentage anyhow, might be more than 50%, are I've fallen, I can't get up, from certain assisted living facilities and nursing homes. Now, we know in talking with folks in the industry that these entities have cut back on services for budgetary reasons or liability reasons. They don't want their staff to pick up somebody that's fallen out of bed. And the response is call the fire department. This is happening everywhere. It's not just unique to us. But other communities are moving forward with plans to try to address that. Because I think everyone here would agree that our goal in life as this community is not to be in the business of a silent partner with these facilities. So we have to address these issues. So a national expert's going to come in, engage with us on the scope of work. It'll take them 3 or 4 months to load the data from all of our calls in. From that point, they'll interview and come to North Canton after the first of the year and start engaging on a level with our fire personnel, with administrative personnel, and talking about, in their view, what they've learned. They hope to have that plan completed by summer, and then we would want to bring that plan to City Council and then let everybody understand that, see that, question it, opine over it, and then try to figure out what our next move is. So nothing's predetermined. It's strictly and sincerely an open book. You tell us, based on your experience, what you see in other communities and what we could be doing here. Next, I only have 3. So the next one is code enforcement, nuisance abatement. And I can't tell you how important really this is, that I feel we must make significant inroads by the end of this year in turning the corner on this. I spend a considerable amount of time driving the city, all 4 wards. This summer, I drove every city in the street, assisting with an assessment and analysis for data on gravel driveways and the type of properties associated with gravel driveways. And what I note is what we have inherited here from previous administration, that there is no code enforcement, there's no nuisance abatement. People went around and got the low-hanging fruit. Oh, there's some signs over here that should be taken down, the easy stuff. But to get to the real stuff that makes a difference in property valuation, that isn't being tackled, hasn't been tackled, and we have to tackle it. We know that in our surveys that we do, the community surveys that council puts out, that no one is virtually happy with where we are with that. Everybody has issues with neighboring properties that they would like to address. So whether it's grass complaints, leaf complaints, I was out I take pictures myself. Took a picture of a house that had 3 trees growing out of the roof. 3 trees in the middle of the roof. Not that the roof looked that bad. It's just that it was so full of debris, leaves that they were never cleaned year after year after year, that things finally took root. That's unacceptable,
Hmm.
right? But it shouldn't require, and obviously we're being very candid here. And I think that's what the community needs, is a candid conversation. But it shouldn't, it shouldn't come down to the administrator driving the city, trying to, finding these things. So to that end, what we are looking for this next budget cycle to do is, in addition to engaging an additional nuisance officer via Safe Build. Now, the nuisance control officers through Safe Build are the folks that go and engage with the constituent. They have the people skills. They have the full understanding of what the code is. And they know the due process that comes from after it. So they engage, they get resistance, or they get compliance, or they're working with them, or whatever. And, it's still probably, 80+% of our complaints are resolved through voluntary compliance. But those that aren't, we want to make sure that we're following the process and giving them all their legal rights that they're entitled to as we move up that ladder. That was all reconstituted with the help of the law department currently, because we didn't have that before. Every time we went to do something, the law director at that time said, no, can't do that, you didn't do this. All right, we wrote it to solve that. And then we'd come back the next time, no, sorry, can't do that. I don't need a piecemeal approach. I need this whole thing resolved so that when we start the process, we finish the process. Okay. So, council has given us, that ability, we think, through this budget to get an additional person in place at Safe Build that will help that end of it. But where I'm going with it on the front end is I need the hunters and gatherers. That's what I call it. So I want to engage, 2 part-time code enforcement coordinators that will drive the city every day, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I will train them to look for what I look for. Not to be an expert, but to find the things that need to be addressed, document them, and turn them over to the code enforcement officer within Safe Build, who will engage with the constituent and then walk it through there. So that we're not wasting time and money by having a code enforcement officer driving the city, and they're the higher paid people. So I'm going to have the lower paid people do that. And interestingly enough, 100 years ago or thereabouts, I read in the repository, it says through the century. It was 100 years ago, and the Canton PD was announcing that they were starting their annual nuisance campaign, and at the time it was focused on grass and weeds, and I'm like, seriously, 100 years? We've made no progress. But they instituted patrols. They were having police patrol. And maybe back then that was maybe a more inexpensive way to do it, but today, we want our police focusing on, crimes, stuff like that, prevention. So, we were pleased that City Council has given us additional tools. And now I think, we've talked about the 4 Ps, policy, process, people, pay for it. All of that's coming together here. So you've helped us with the policy, and we've identified the process. We're getting the people in place now, and through this budget, that's going to make it work. But you've given us vacant property registration, so vacant lots that, particularly on the commercial side, that are held out. What are you doing with them? We don't know. We just can't allow them to sit empty. You have to be marketing these to try to do something. And as long as folks are engaged in and actively marketing their property, they're listing it or putting a sign out or whatever, that they want to lease it, they want to sell it, there isn't any penalty involved with that. But if you're not doing anything and you're just letting it sit year after year, decade after decade, that's unacceptable. This is modeled after a vacancy registration program in Millersburg. Millersburg was going through, what they felt was a crisis at the time, where a lot of buildings were becoming vacant in downtown and were being acquired by individuals that had no interest in marketing it, just were waiting for somebody to come to them, and nobody ever came. And each year got worse and worse. So they introduced an ordinance, it's a progressive ordinance. Each year that you fall under the plan that you don't comply, the penalty becomes larger. And this would apply to buildings that are partially occupied. So if we had had this in place some years ago, like at the Hoover District, even though there's lots of buildings there, not all of them are occupied. A lot of them are unoccupied. And the idea is to institute this and drive them towards getting a resolution on it. And at the meantime, if they don't, and they pay the fines and the fees associated with it, it does give our city those user fees, if you will, for those that are going to choose to take that option, the no plan option. So I think that's very important. We also have a commercial property maintenance code. Thank you, City Council, for instituting that last year. And that gives us the ability to go from the outside and look around and make those determinations of what needs to be taken care of. And then we also thank City Council this year for the rental registration. We have letters that are going to be going out on roughly in November, notifying those property owners that we believe have rentals that are 8 units or less. We've noted in a couple of fires recently that were not any active smoke alarms that would have been caught in a rental registration inspection. This gets us to the inside of the building. And we think then with the commercial property maintenance code on the outside, the rental registration on the inside, for a lot of those structures, it's going to help us do things. And that's the end result. We have to do things. We can't continue, in all sincerity, to just let this slip away. The last time we conducted a study was the 2009 to 2019 period, residential property values in the city of North Canton. You've heard Daryl led the effort on this to get that analysis. And, property values increased 1% over a 10-year period. Not 1% a year, 1% over a 10-year period. Now, we have Monticello, we got Auburn Knolls, we got Sanctuary, all relatively new, all high value. Should be moving it like that percentage way up, but there's stuff that's fallen down way low. It brings that average that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable to the schools. The schools are, need funding and they rely upon those property values. So fire EMS, we're going to have some continued dialogue on that. Code enforcement, I believe I have all the pieces and parts in place with this budget to make this happen and make this real this year. So we appreciate that. And then on this last one, this will segue into kind of some of the stuff that Catherine's going to address, is, on our parks and facilities. So our city buildings, when I got here, you saw what that city hall looked like. Terrible. But that's been addressed, and, I guess I'm a stickler for detail, and I wasn't happy with the state of our parks. And so we got to up our game on maintenance. And, what I found is that over this last 15-year period or so here, that, the Parks Department, that maintained that stuff, couldn't, if they focused on that, they couldn't maintain the public alleys right away. And, I started getting the calls on that. What do you mean? We used to do it, but we don't do it anymore because we don't have people. Well, I know a lot of those people had to go away back in, 05, 06 because of Hoover. But, those revenues have been rebuilt, and we need to get the proper employees in here that can provide us with a much more cohesive feel to our park system. We have to up our game. Look at everybody around you. This community was noted for schools, its safety, parks, its destination. Come here, great parks, all that. But everybody else is up in their game around us. Jackson, Green, Canton, just everybody. Massillon. You look at all the things they're doing. Now, all those communities, have dedicated funding. They all have levies. I'm not here to suggest that tonight, but am saying to you that, if we're looking at continuing to do quality additions, like what you saw at Dogwood, it's going to take more than just asking for contributions and squirreling away some money from operations to be able to do that. The projects get bigger because the community is demanding more. We do think that there's some, low-cost options that we can backfill of things in this community that we don't have. Not everything has to be like Dogwood Park. There's other park attributes that we don't have that other communities do, that we need to find that low-cost solution to be involved with. But what we must do is whatever we do, we must maintain it. We cannot fall into the trap that was allowed here, that 22 years ago, we put in a splash pad, 22 years ago, we put in a skate park, and we've done nothing since. And that skate park had been just allowed to deteriorate to the point where it was unsafe. So as a management of risk, I said, we need to take that down. The safeguards on it that prevent you from getting cut, gone, rusted through metal, exposure, sharp edges. How long do we want to just leave that out there for that to occur? It just doesn't make sense. So those have been removed, and we'll need to talk about the game plan at that as we go through 2023. So with that, I'm going to move to Gina and Catherine, and then I may jump in periodically, but our most important asset.
Well, thank you. Thank you, City Council. You guys entrust, you guys make the decisions, and then you pass it on to us, and you entrust us. And Gina's going to talk about all the revenues and expenditures and all the operational functional areas of the city. And the area we handle is the people. So I'm going to talk about the strategic human capital plan that we have in place. So what's human capital? Simply put, it's people. There's one of our guys, James McKelvey, Street Department. It doesn't matter what business you're in, whether it's manufacturing or municipality, people are your greatest resource. They are your human capital. So, you ask, like, how does human capital determine organizational success? Well, people are who you rely on to deliver quality services. The people carry out the goals and vision of the organization. The people are directly responsible for the success or failure of a project, a product, or a company. People, simply put, are an investment. So a strategic organizational plan for North Canton's human capital was desperately needed. Now, strategic planning is worthless unless there's strategic vision. It's like Patrick talked about. We both came about 5.5 years ago. And step one we did was we had to develop a vision. There was no vision. So, what do you want to do? This statement of what, this vision statement appears on every performance evaluation of every single employee. And you can read it there. We strive to be a city of choice. Title, live, work, and play. And, when you have a vision statement of what you want to do, you then need a mission statement of how are you going to do that. Again, that is also on every performance evaluation of every employee, so they understand what their role is and that they will provide exceptional service to the communities that we serve. So the next step in defining the organizational culture is, you say, what is culture? Culture is the behaviors, the beliefs, the customs, the shared attitudes that develop over time in an organization, which directly contribute to shaping the environment and defining that organization's culture. Everyone talks about Disney's culture, high level of service. What was the culture here in the city of North Canton? Well, it was broken. When we came in, there were a lot of problems. We had, inefficient organizational structure, we had lack of accountability and oversight, and, you can read all of the things up there that really needed to be fixed. And even more so, these were just some of the issues.
These were some of the ones that came in that was like, every time I turned around, it seemed like there was another onion to peel.
We called it peeling back the layers of the onion. You can pick and choose whatever you want to read. There's over 50 items up there. But, there was just a lot not getting done. And why wasn't it getting done? Was it a lack of oversight? Sometimes. Lack of staff? Definitely. We heard that a lot when we found some of these problems. It was like, who was gonna do it? Or so-and-so used to do it. I mean, there were, just a lot of disengaged employees, I would say. Again, not vested in a mission because the mission didn't exist. And this is what, we had to go in. Some of the big ones there, you see is, no development, no park development happened for 20 years. Just sat. After Price Park got developed, it's a beautiful park, and then nothing else. All they could really do is, maintain and cut and clean, cut the grass. So how do we fix it? Well, human capital planning takes a lot of things. It takes, first, we had to analyze the labor workforce resources for effectiveness in meeting deliverables. Then we had to match the service demand and labor supply by strategic alignment of the human capital. Our community wants a lot. We have to see if we can deliver that. Maximize productivity of the workforce through consistent oversight and accountability to optimize effectiveness and providing exceptional city services. And we had to also continue to attract new staff while motivating and developing and retaining our current workforce in order to achieve these deliverables. So, going forward, the capital plan structure. Can't read that. I'd like to out there, but you can see, it is a process that we have to first look in the planning. We got to say, is the current staff adequate? What skills does that current staff possess? Do those employees know the basics of their job duties and their expectations? Does the workforce supply equal the project demand? Patrick spoke of the 4 Ps. We've talked about it before. This is the 3rd P. There's policies you come up with, the process to do it, the people is the 3rd, and then pay for it. The leadership structure was really important too. We had to assess when we first came, and we have to continually assess this management structure and identify what leadership training is needed. Just because people get elevated into a leadership position doesn't necessarily mean they know how to manage people. They may have been technically competent, but we have to give them leadership skills. We have to set them up to be successful. So we set clear expectations of our leadership with what deliverables we want. And we have ensured a succession plan has been put in place for business continuity. I've heard it said before, there used to just be a city administrator, no deputy administrator, just a city finance director, no deputy finance director. Well, how was that working out? Because when they left, nobody knew what was going on. Now, if somebody leaves, there's a succession plan. The baton is passed on. So, you have to have that because you have to caution in the leadership of staff wearing multiple hats. We just took advantage in some department heads. We said, you want to do parks? Okay, you'll do that, and building maintenance, and you'll wear that. And you'll do the water distribution department. You put so much on them. And thankfully, we did have some good people that really have worn multiple hats and still do. HR, IT, economic development. These aren't our title, but we do multiple duties. But I caution that it does lead to burnout. It burns out your staff. So then the next step is talent selection. We know when to source candidates and where. There's no more passive recruiting. We do active recruiting. Passive recruiting is just put an ad in the paper and just hope some people apply. Active recruiting is networking, talking, being part of groups, committees, clubs, knowing where that talent is. And something really unique that our workforce did this past contract was they used to be very closed-minded in lateral transfers in. It was, you had to start at the bottom and work your way up. And what if a guy worked for another municipality and did that job in the street department and he did it for 10 years? We wanted him to start at the bottom, start over at a low rate and start over, earn his stripes. They saw the value of bringing someone in that had that experience and they can learn from them. So they actually were amenable to that in their contract for lateral transfers to come in. And that brings in more talent. We want to give them the tools to succeed. We properly onboard employees now. We have an onboarding process. We used to just hire them and good luck, not really follow up. So now we follow up, we check in, we have a performance culture. There's a probationary period review and then there's annual reviews and they're all conducted timely. We also do something called state interviews. I don't wait now until you're ready to go. You hate this place so much you want to quit. That's an exit interview. What good does that do? You've already found the other job. I'm supposed to sit down and ask you why you want to leave? Too late. So we check in with the state interviews, sometimes with new hires. And you get really insightful information where they may be like, I thought the job was this, but it's this. And then we work through it because we want to keep that talent. So Patrick mentioned performance improvement plans, known as PIPs. They didn't exist before, but they do now. Those are employees that maybe aren't quite hitting what is expected in their job duties. So we'll sit down and we'll talk about that. And we consistently follow up on the performance issues, follow the progress. And it's just course corrected. And I say on there's some people make a U-turn and some people see the exit side. The accountability was the biggest thing. Our staff now knows their duties, responsibilities, the basics. They know who they report to and what is expected of them. And what's expected is North Canton sets the bar high. We tell all new hires when they come in that it's a high bar our community sets in every area. Streets, it doesn't matter where you work, what department, administration, police, fire, they're watching you. They watch our summer workers and they make sure that they're not speeding, have their seatbelts on. They call us. We have monthly department head meetings and leadership, and then the whiteboard follow-up. That's all over Patrick's office, everything that is expected.
And we should note that all those things that she just went through, none of that was done before.
So that's really managing your capital, your human capital. And just to go through, we do have a process now in interviews. It's no more somebody just shows up and, somebody knew them and they have a job and they're in the department. This is an actual interviewing process with multiple steps because we want to find the right person. They have to have the skills to do the job. We develop them once they come in. We develop the talent. That picture there, some of our street department guys. They're in a training class down at the water treatment plant, and they invited other municipality to come in because we were able to host the class in one of our training rooms. So, there's a process again there on the recruiting and bringing them in and, developing the staff, offering the opportunities in classes and certifications so that they're more valuable. They have more tools in their tool belts. And it's not just one guy that has the agriculture certification and he's the only guy that can do, mosquito fogging. It's like, we want multiple people doing this. It's so important to invest in development. So I love this quote. A CFO, kind of like a Gina here, a city finance director, asks the CEO, what happens if we invest in developing our people and they leave us? And the CEO says, what happens if we don't and they stay? That's worse. There's a cost to turnover. Everyone knows the direct costs. We spend a lot of money. We put the ads out there, you have to pay for that. You have to pay for the pre-testing, drug screening, background. Those are just the monetary costs, but there's also the indirect costs. You have the having to train the new person, the lack of motivation from prior to leaving. The new term quiet quitting is when someone just becomes so disengaged or just, phoning it in, and the cost, in potentially losing additional employees as, they go out the door. So bringing into some of the numbers, the service department here on, we talked about the people needed to do more things. So in 2022, Parks and Rec Department, five employees. We're asking for an increase of 2. That department will have 7 employees. Lands and Building is not a department that really had any dedicated person, although we have a lot of land and a lot of buildings. So we want 1. Street Department, 6 in 22, going to go up to 8, 2 more people in the Street Department. Water Department is just an increase of 1. Breaking it down a little more for you to see, like in the Parks Department. So when I say that Parks Department had 5 employees this past year, we're asking for 2 more to get to 7. Those 5 employees took care of 13 locations. You see all the parks there, the swimming pool, all of the amenities. We have 40 amenities, all the outdoor rental shelters, indoor facilities, restrooms, 9 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts, 2 swimming pools, baseball, softball, walking track, stocked fishing pond. They have over 80 acres of park they have to manage, and that's all they can do is manage. It's a challenge for them to clean the grounds up, cut the grass, empty the trash, clean the restrooms, take care of flowers, trees, parking lot. Can't get to the duck stuff or the goose droppings. We hear it a lot, but no matter how much they power wash that daily, it still comes back. And the community wants more. We've done surveys. They've told us they want more development. We get feedback. We know parks are great economic development. We see what Dogwood has done, how many people have been brought into the community. And this is what they want. They want more. They want the current parks to have updated park equipment, dog parks, adult exercise equipment, splash pad, nature trail, skate park. The list goes on and on. When we go into, I'm sorry, that wasn't up there. I was reading about the other one. But going into the street department, Now, we had 6 employees there, and we're asking for 2 more to bring that to 8. And this is what the street department employees have done this year with the 6 employees that they have. The 89 lane miles paved, 1,700 feet of curb, 5 alleys, 20 catch basins, 2 big mainline sanitary repairs. And we know they have the best snow plow crew with the heated streets in the winter. And again, like Patrick mentioned, ability to do more with that new paver equipment you guys, approved to get. They can pave alleys, doing curves for less contracting out jobs. And one of the other more important things is, when they're just trying to get out there and get the potholes filled and do the necessary repairs, they can't get to the more important infrastructure GIS mapping that we need to do. Somebody needs to be inputting that in. So, having more staff really helps that. So, adding in the PD and fire department, starting off police, just 1, increase of 1. They're going from 27 to 28. Now, Patrick mentioned police school services. We share that. They're adding a couple SROs that'll be shared with North Canton City Schools. Fire and EMS, addition of 3. And in the dispatch center for the PD, it's just an addition of 1. But we all love this safe community that we live in. And we know the, response times are good. And that's the additional ask for this year. So now coming into the administration department. So I call administration command central, and it's not to be dramatic. It is. That is what we are. We're not just the mayor's office. We're also human resources, IT, operations management, the call center for the customer service communication center, the 2 administrative assistants that sit out front take an enormous number of calls daily. They're entering in all the work orders. Everyone that's calling from a dead squirrel in a street to a more serious issue. There was a time during COVID, 1 administrative assistant took 600 calls, and I can run a report on this.
Time period.
That was in a 1-month time period, 600 calls, so it's 5 days a week, 20 days in that month, phone ringing off the hook. We handle economic development, park development, code enforcement, grant writing, research, records management. So we have a need, we do not have a position, and we want to create the community outreach manager. That will be new. So that's an increase of 1 there. We want to add 3 administrative assistants because we do the administrative assisting for all departments in the city, not just administration. We're working for engineering and streets and, every operational area that used to have their own admin does not anymore. It's all centrally located in our department. The code enforcement Patrick talked about, 2 part-times equals 1 full FTE. And then creating a new position of the IT systems and public policy analyst. So again, like I said, because, we have the administrative assistants handling all the areas. That's what feeds into the operations of administration, every department. We oversee 14 city buildings. That got increased with the 6+ land bank facilities. We have the 8 city departments. Give or take 120 or so employees when we have seasonals. And then we have 12 city leaders and department heads that we follow up with. So, the human capital needs, I think we're asking for in this budget. We're not being egregious or capricious. I think that we're just right-sizing the staff to provide the exceptional service and achieve deliverables. And trust me, we're not capricious with what you give us. When I say we source the employees, like Patrick mentioned, it's not just throwing bodies at it. It's an actual human capital strategy, sourcing top talent, keeping them very accountable, performance managing them, investing in them and their development, and building and retaining a motivated staff of performers focused on delivering the vision of the city. You know what they say? Work makes the dream work. So we do appreciate, everything that city council does for us, and we take that very, very serious, that responsibility with the people that are out there delivering the services. That's all I have. Anyone have any questions for me?
Well, let's let Gina do her part. And
I'm just gonna follow along on the ordinances. I
Oh,
don't want to
all
add
right.
more story. When we're ready to
Okay.
talk about the numbers, we'll walk through the ordinances.
All right, well, then I guess we will. However council wants to proceed at this time, you just general throwing it out there, or if you want to ask the questions, you go through A, B, C, and D, and Gina said, we're here for you.
Just open the floor. Did you guys want to ask a
Well-
question? Go ahead.
With the EMS and police department and the levies, you know, we talked about it. When a levy passes, is there really enough money to cover? The answer is no.
It's a great point, John. I'm glad you came back to it. So we talked about how the EMS, fire EMS levies generated 1.3 million in additional revenues to backfill that gap that was coming out of the general fund. And as we went through it this year, it took an additional 400,000.
750, I believe.
750,000.
550 to fire and 100,000.
550 to fire and balance the EMS to make that work. So it was, you know, a picture in time. At the time we looked at it, that was the determination that was made, those adjustments. But we have been since then more and more and more involved in the management operations of the fire department, getting to understand it, what it is, and it, quite honestly, that's not something that they've really had, so it's been this dialogue of sharing, getting us to that point. And, you know, perhaps if we redid it over, we would have changed a few percentages a different way, instead of it maybe being this much fire and this much EMS, maybe would have made it the other way around. But bottom line is, it served its purpose. But even if it had been the right number today, that number is going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to grow because of the two locations. Every time a call goes out, Station 2 goes out first, then the people at Station 1 that can backfill Station 2 go, or if they can't, they just do a call out to get people to backfill Station 2. That's at overtime.
And, you know, and previous councils are probably to blame for some of this, because I think the city came and wanted this, but they didn't want to put that much of a levy on at the time. You know, so we end up robbing Peter to pay Paul all the time. And it's not the way to run a city.
That's right, and you bring up a good point. It's not just fire, you know, fire and EMS, but as you know, we've talked about storm sewer levy. We talked about the street levy. Now, both of those are levies that come up for renewal in 2023. And historically, we've left them where they've kind of always been. Each one generates about $375,000. So when you approve the general street paving project, you know, that I think is on this, may be on this agenda, I'm not sure. But that's the levy money. That's it. Do we need to do more than that? Absolutely, we do. But everything, you know, comes down to a function of that dollar. So we, as we get to through the budget process, the administration was going to come back in, you know, the November, December, January timeframe, in that 3 months, and have a discussion about the renewal of those levies for next year, and what do we want to do with right sizing them. And, you know, we had the storm issues this year, and so 375,000 is what we have to work with. So we need to up the game there. What are we going to go and ask the community for? And I would like us to go with those in the May ballot cycle. I'm anticipating other activity, other asks being made for the November ballot. And I would like to make sure that we get a clear shot at ours than perhaps from some others. So that would be something that we would want to come back and talk. And then to your point, though, about previous the predecessor, you know, it has to go back to water. The water rates that we did. I mean, you know, we can't emphasize enough how the federal regulations have changed. And we're required to have an asset management plan. We're supposed to figure out all the different things that need to get done and build a rate structure around it so that we don't end up like Flint, Michigan and other communities like that. And you know, we had that go around with previous council that thought that it was more of arbitrary and number whatever we felt comfortable with, we could just go with that. No, no. So we still have to spend these monies and do these things. And if we don't have it coming out of the water rates, then where does it come from?
And the water rates, the sewer rates, your chemical prices have what,
40%,
40%
Yep.
increase?
40%. You know, the federal government instituting, you know, rationing as it relates to chlorine. That, you know, water treatment plants need that, and maybe swimming pools don't. So you'll see all that start to play out, you know, next year from what we see. But just as an example, you know, the part of that asset management plan, when we got the first read from the federal government, said that, hey, if you have any municipal lead lines in the ground, those need to be replaced, and they need forthwith. Well, fortunately, you know, North Canton, for the most part, had been, you know, continually upgrading that, and we feel that all of our municipal-owned lines we're lead-free. We're still going to have to hire consultants to certify all this stuff and be able to turn that into the EPA. But then they changed the rules since the water rates were put in place, and that rule change was, we're looking now at if there's a lead line that runs from the municipal main to the house. The federal government says, we don't think that it should be the homeowner responsible for that, to replace those lines. It should be the city. So we have to study that. We have to get the consultant to go around, and we have to inventory every one of these lines in the city to determine which ones are, if there are any lead, because they would prefer copper or, you know, basically copper is what we want. In other communities, that are much older than ours, that have a much more ancient infrastructure, don't know how they're going to pay for it, quite honestly. So,
Thank you.
but thank you for the question. Really, that's another thing that has to be revisited, because the way it was done is going to lead to a gross imbalance, and that imbalance is going to have to be funded by the general fund. Back to that if we don't fix it. And it's about having an honest discussion with the community about what it takes to run the city and what you're willing to pay for. And if you're not, then, you know, that gives us the direction of where we need to go.
Before that ordinance was passed, wasn't it 5 years that rates were frozen? It didn't move?
There were provisions in there to revisit it, but, you know, after 3 years, and I think we completed 1 year.
It was 3 years at 5%, and then the following.
No, I mean, before that was enacted. Yeah,
Oh, it had been 5 years.
yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
With no
Yeah.
increase.
That was on that list of 50 problems.
Right, yeah, I mean, we're
Yeah,
still.
it's like
playing
2017 or
catch up for
something.
that.
You planning are you planning the staffing changes for fire and EMS prior to this consultant study? Do you think it's gonna reduce OT enough to justify that, or are you gonna wait for the study?
Well, we're
before
gonna,
adding?
we need the firefighters now, because we think that it will help us with the OT. They're firefighter EMTs, right? So it's
One is an
really
inspector, one inspector, two.
it's one inspector, 2 firefighter EMTs. And it comes back to, unless there's a policy change by the city on how we're going to pay for these folks, as I mentioned about the assisted living facilities, you know, we have to respond to that call right now. And there's just not enough people when you're running 300 calls, and, you know, 150 plus of those are pickups that don't involve transport. You just have to go up there, pick them up, but we have to institute every protocol, because we don't know what we're getting into when we get there. You know, do we rely on someone just saying, well, this person fell, they just need picked up, put back in bed, and then we get there and they've got some sort of, you know, right, the department notices some sort of, you know, hematoma going on or whatever, and now we don't have the appropriate personnel there to deal with it. It's sending everybody all the time. And in other communities, they charge a a base fee, if you will, to those entities that they have to pay for that. But to your point, I'm trying to do as minimal as possible, Dave, so that we can get the study done to give us the direction that we need to go. So the ask was for a lot more than that. I believe they'd asked for 6. And I said, there's just no way am I going to do that without knowing where we are.
And just a note on the inspector, it's because of all the new buildings going in. We have 2 new school buildings going in. We have the giant Diebold facility. We'll have Meyer. And the inspectors that they have now are busy with what they have now. And you have that on, and we have one that's nearing a retirement. Who's eligible. You never know when someone's going to go. So we don't want to be in that spot.
So you mentioned policy about people pay. Salbeck, do you see the revenues to cover the number of people that you plan to add, that the mayor's wanting to add? Is being sufficient to cover this in
Yes,
2023?
we are proposing 17 and a half new positions. The half are the part-time, right? Not a half of a person. And Ben, will you pull just the fund summary up? So on the main page of, I'm sorry, the comparison. Let's look at the comparison. And so this shows you just on the left is the list of each fund and the revenues from last year versus the revenues that we're projecting for next year. It's a negative 8% difference, but that includes the ARPA funds, some capital project funds for the parks, those sorts of things. And then if we look at the expenses, it's a 1% difference on expenses. So some of those things, our income tax at this point right now is at a 12% increase over last year. And we grew all the way through COVID. We never saw the decline as far as service providing businesses. North continue to work. And so our income tax stayed steady. So we would never present a budget that is not balanced without some remediation or a plan in there. Now, we do have a list of capital items and some other programs from when the departments first sent in all of their budget or their budget lists for what we need to make our department the best it can be. And of course, not all of those things can be added in one year. And so when we compile those and prioritize those are the things that we're talking about that we're presenting for next year's budget. But there is an ongoing list that we will again review next year of things that maybe didn't get funded in this year's budget.
You want to do the 214?
Oh, the compensated absences fund, the 214. So that is a fund that in a few years ago, 5-6 years ago, there was set aside some money I think that was the year, I'm sorry, that was the year where the rules were put into place for retirements. And instead of getting paid out 100% of your sick leave, those rules were changed and they were capped so that it wouldn't break the bank. Because there's a large number of people who will be eligible to retire or are eligible now. And so we need to plan and budget for their severance package. So in that fund, when we calculate those people, it comes up to $992,000. And so to have that money in that fund will not drain the water fund, the general fund, the sewer fund, all the street fund, all of those other funds such as levies and those sorts of things that are paying for those services won't be drained by a payout for retirement. Because should that money have not been there, we would have to wait a year to hire somebody because we're paying out. Does that make sense? So to have that, and we did budget for everyone who is eligible, and if they do not retire next year, that's absolutely fine. And we will continue to roll that money and recalculate it every year based on their current rate and keep that money in that set aside. Ben, will you go back to the fund summary then, the first one you had pulled up? So this is the same thing that's in your monthly package, your monthly finance report. The 3 columns in yellow are because they're estimated beginning balances for each fund, and that's because that's just the best calculations we can do as how we're going to end up this year. We'll certify those balances as soon as we close out December in the fiscal year. So that shows you what the projected revenues are. The green highlighted are our levy funds. There's some other things, of course, in the general fund, such as income tax. So there's the street levy fund, the EMS, the fire, and the storm levy funds. And then the next column is the expenses. The column that is the second from the end, or second from the right, is current year overspending, current year expending over current year revenue. So that takes into account whether or not we're using carryover balance. And then the final column, which can never be red or never be negative, the general fund would have to transfer money to support those other funds. No other fund can support general, so general is the end-all balancing. So when we look at current year overspending, sometimes we want to see, is that a trend? What's causing it? You know, we can't continue on that if that's what's happening. All of the funds in the middle are special revenue funds, which means whatever money we get in for that specific purpose has to be spent for that specific purpose. And so, such as looking at the CARES Act or Coronavirus Relief Fund, the 219 fund, it looks like we're overspending $1.157 million. We're spending what we're carrying over, because those are infrastructure projects that will not be bid out and completed until 23 and 24. So those are the sorts of things, we look at that and we say, oh my gosh, but this is the puzzle that brings all of the pieces together. And then this is again what you will follow through the rest of the year when we bring appropriation ordinances to you, or somebody has donated money, we have grant money, new money, we certify those to the county auditor, and they say, yes, it's available for appropriation. We bring those appropriation amendments to you throughout the year. So just, since we're on OpenGov, Ben, I'm sorry, can you drive back to the home page? This is the new visual site for our budget. Jim, the Deputy Finance Director, Jim and Tracy in our office has worked endlessly on making this aesthetically look so much better, and added a lot more information. So there's stories on here. You can explore by clicking into anything. And I know, Steph, we talked today about the pages that you used to get with the descriptions on the bottom, the explanations as to what we had last year and what we did. So here are those pages.
Yeah.
And just for instance, click on one. Pick anyone. On the very top, we're going to talk about, because if you scroll down to the graph, you'll see there's the expenses. And again, if you hover over them, you can see the numbers, or if you click into them, it'll drill down in. You can still be very interactive with this budget and follow any scroll that you want to on the page. And then when you go back to the home page, you can go into the next department or read more about. There is a budget brief. There's a very nice explanatory letter from our city administrator that just talks about the focus of the budget, the goals of the budget, and what we expect to accomplish with the money that we're allocating.
I think this is an awesome program for the community
Mm-hmm.
to see everything.
Gina, do you have, or Ben, do you have the monthly report that you could pull that shows the income tax revenues historically and year to date? Can you pull that up for me just real quick?
Yes, Ben, if you, can you just go to the, even the general fund would probably have the, in the report.
I want to circle back with an observation. Just a quick comment to tie in some of the things that Patrick has and Kathy have referenced, since we have it.
That's what you're looking for, right?
That's what I'm looking for. Okay. From my very limited worldview, this goes to Dave's earlier question. That income tax receipts is the number that matters. That's what drives the services in this city. Our mission is to grow that bottom line. And I think what it suggests is, those numbers suggest is that our emphasis upon retail over the last 24 months as part of our economic development strategy is in fact pretty sound, because COVID didn't diminish it greatly. That's A. So when people say, is Meyer important? It absolutely is important. It's 150 jobs, 300 jobs, excuse me. It will provide, what, 150 in revenue, I think, Patrick?
Mhm.
So that's 150, that bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing Charlotte? Well, because we're gonna have how many jobs at Diebold?
400 new.
400 new to the bottom line. Our goal, we've got a school, thank you.
Yep.
Our school, we're gonna have a new school that we didn't have before. Again, those jobs to the bottom line.
Yep.
Coming back up on North Main Street, Meyer. All those outlots will be sold. Those will produce a lesser number of jobs, but probably in the range of 100 to 150, Patrick. Is that accurate? What do you think?
100, I'd say.
Yeah, we'll be conservative. 100. Again, but none of that happens without individuals in City Hall who are pursuing economic development opportunities. And those economic development opportunities require A, policy analysis, and B, grants. Because some of these projects in part will be paid with grants. So if we're going to grow that number, we have to have a professional team that can go get the opportunity and the dollars. Because at the end of the day, for every dollar we raise means that we don't necessarily, well, I shouldn't say you don't have to go back to the taxpayers, but if you do, the touch will be lighter. Maybe that's the way to put it. And so it goes back, 40 years ago, we had the goose that laid the golden egg across the street. You didn't have to manage this stuff because the money was pouring in faster than you could spend it. That's not the case today. Your money needs to be managed professionally. You have to look at that number right there to make sure that we've got, to Dave's question, we've got the resources to pay for what we need. I would argue that as the administration has proposed some additional jobs, I believe that when I was first on council back in the Stone Age, we had about 135 employees. We had a huge number of people, but again, revenue wasn't the issue. And frankly, you didn't have to manage your revenue to the degree that we do today. And I think, as we've blown through the slide, but I think the administration deserves a huge amount of praise for spending the last 60 months peeling the onion.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a huge amount of cleanup accomplished. Given them the tools, the administration's done it. And that affects the bottom line when you're not wasting money.
Right, and plus, with the new shopping going up on Market, that will help. As Walsh College, 40 years ago, Walsh was 3 buildings. What is it today? Walsh continues to grow, more money. And that's what we're after.
So again, coming back to this notion, if you've got your professionally managed, you've got a vision, you have a strategy, you have a sound rationale for doing what you're doing, I think you can get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're seeing now is, as these pieces and parts have fallen into place over the last 60 months, we're beginning to see the benefits of having a well-run, well-managed city. Because things will happen. Just look at, W.J. Chevrolet. I won't use the previous name. Gone. How long did it sit there? An eyesore.
Decade.
Yep.
Decade. So, okay. But I think this is, I think you're spot on, Mayor Wilder. This is how you get to the next level.
And then educating us as a council during the budget planning
Yeah.
was huge. Thank you again.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You guys deserve the credit because you have an interest in it and the desire, and every one of you met individually with us. And I can't say that, outside of Stephanie, who's a returning council person, but the other ones from the other councils looked to just show up Monday night, and that was the extent of their involvement. So kudos to all of you for taking the time to dive deep in it. And I'm sure there's going to continue to be questions and stuff that comes along the way, and we're happy to answer those. But I think, the bottom line is that, I think Gina said that our expenses projected for 23 are roughly flat, -1% over 22. And that's with the proposed things that we've laid out. So it's trying to get there and do it responsibly. And yeah, maybe it is, the total is 17.5. It doesn't mean we'll end up hiring them. Let me tell you, the marketplace, Dave knows, John, marketplace is hard to get people. So this is certainly our intent. Our plan is to get there, but, we'll see how well we do.
One other comment I think that I want to share with everyone is that ours is a first-ring suburban community. The bulk of its growth occurred through basically 1980, with some exceptions, Washington Square and maybe Monticello. But the bottom line is, we know our community's gotten older, and it presents a unique set of challenges as communities get old. To Kathy's point, quality of life, public safety really matter, and we have to pay attention to it. But Patrick made a very quick reference to something that I think is truly critical. When we were awash with Hoover money, we began replacing infrastructure at no cost. It was absolutely critical to the preservation of the community. John Orr Street, for example, new water lines, curbs and gutters. Curbs and gutters were installed around town. Along the way, particularly after '07, that programming came to a stop. We're still a first-ring suburban community, and I can take you into John's ward, for example, and show you streets that don't have curb and gutter. The housing stock has begun to deteriorate, or is deteriorating, not begun, it is. And if we want to save those neighborhoods, we've got to get back in, figure out a way to curb and gutter those streets and clean up the neighborhood. So it's not necessarily a luxury that we're proposing, or I would support. But it's a matter of survival. Because once a neighborhood's gone, very difficult to get them back. And we know that from the experience in other communities. All this stuff, water lines, storms, sanitaries, curbs and gutters, they all matter. At the end of the day, to do it, you gotta have people, you gotta have the funds, and it goes back to that bottom line, income tax revenue. And that's why, again, economic development and grants are so critical. But you gotta have people who are willing to do it. Okay.
Okay, do you want to look at item 7A?
Sure. Any other comments, questions? Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Ben, do you need to read it, or do we just?
That's the next meeting. This meeting, we can just talk.
We can just talk about it. Okay, so item 7A is chapter 155, personnel regulations. If you remember the maximum pay rates for each position, these are exempt positions only, not unions. They increase automatically by Social Security's cost of living, which was released on October 13th at 8.7%.
Salary.
The salary caps, correct, for the position. So that is in here, as well as some other items that we wanted to clean up: the annual uniform allowance for the chiefs. We did add the new positions for code enforcement coordinator and the community outreach manager, the IT systems and public policy analyst. Those are new positions. And then we also wanted to talk about the wages for council, how those will stay in line with the OPERS minimum. And there was a typo on the vacation. We're not changing it there. We're just changing the accrual method, just the wording on those. And the only thing it was item K, but personal leave was not addressed in personnel regulations. It is in our personnel policy, so we just wanted to make sure it was codified into the ordinance along with all of the other things that are spelled out in there. So those are the items in chapter 155. In item 7B, so that is, Ben, do you want to speak to that? When we want to add the positions, we have to increase the number of allowed positions for civil service.
Yes, so because police and fire are civil service, they have personnel caps, which are set by City Council. As Patrick discussed earlier, the schools are requesting some more SROs, and there was previously, when the SRO program was first enacted, they added a clause to the police caps that said, you know, this is the cap unless you have funding from an outside source. It makes it hard to track of what the cap is and isn't, right? So this proposal is just to raise the cap to 25, which should be, I believe, one more than we need to cover the 2 requested SROs, and cut the other clause about if you have funding from an outside source. So Chief Kemp would be able to hire the patrolman he needs within his budget to fill the SROs, and then he just assigns a patrolman to serve as the SRO.
The school is providing 75%.
Yes, sir.
We're paying 25.
Yep.
And we should say too that, you know, I'm not sure of the historical nature of this ordinance. I, you know, have to go back and ask the oldest member of City Council to recollect. But it seems to me somewhat, you know, redundant, putting a cap on, because ultimately council controls the budget. And you're only going to fund whatever it is that we're, you know, whatever the number is that we're doing. It doesn't matter what the cap is, because it's what we have money for to fund.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed to be an extra bureaucratic step today. I don't know, Darrell, if there was some rationale behind it back in the day, but
I'm not sure, to tell you the truth.
I can remember when it
think
was
there just-
19.
You know, to answer your question, Patrick, we, as a collective body, are in a much different management place than we were a generation ago. I can remember sitting down and going through the budget, page by page, line by line, and arguing about whether we ought to buy cell phones. We spent more time arguing about a cell phone for EMS than we did on the big cost of running EMS. I think this was just perhaps an artificial way of council asserting its authority symbolically when it really didn't need to. That's just my guess.
Okay, item 7C, Ben compiled a list this is really to satisfy our auditors when they come into audit and they like to see the resolution that council approves. These are the rates and fees for all services or anything that we are providing and charging a fee for. So it's all included in one resolution. We're not asking you to change anything. We just compiled them so that you're acknowledging that these, and then the auditors will test all of our receipts against what is the established rate. So that's really the purpose of the resolution of rates and fees. And then item 7D is the appropriations, which brings everything together, lists the transfers, interfund transfers, advances needed for grant monies that will be repaid once we receive the grant, and then the list of appropriations by fund and within each fund by department, and within each department, the personnel, and then all other. And the total appropriations for 2023 is $52,652,000. Oh, so yes, so remember, a couple years ago, we came in and cleaned up some of the funds and cleaned up some of the, just some things that were segregated out or some things that were combined together, such as dispatch was combined in with the police department. We've separated those out. We budget for them now. So some of the other things, the income tax has had its own fund. And so the money would be receipted into this income tax fund and then transferred to all these other funds that need its help or support. And so at the end of the year, the auditors come in and roll them all into the general fund. And so we're presenting the budget in that manner. So all of the income tax will come into the general fund, and we will transfer what is needed to support fire, EMS, capital, other items. Instead of duplicating those transfers, sometimes I believe it makes our budget look inflated because we're showing the revenues twice with the income tax and then the transfer. And of course, we're showing the expense twice as well with the transfer and then the fund that's spending the money. So this will simplify that budget. The water capital fund was the same. So the 651 had a water capital fund, which was money transferred out of the water department into the water capital to pay for capital projects in the water. And so we're just keeping all of that in the water fund.
And we had a lot of people that purported to be finance directors before Gina got there. And then, also as you drill down, you'll note that where there used to be a mayor's budget and the mayor's line items, we consolidated that all into administration. So it didn't make sense to, have the mayor's salary and then assign certain portions of the administrative personnel to the support of the mayor, having his own copy paper allowance and envelope allowance. It's like, really, it's all running out of the administration anyway. He's the chief executive, so let's just try to make this a little bit cleaner so that it's easier for people to see where the monies are.
Makes sense.
Any further comments on 7A, B, C, and D?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'm gonna go through the motions one by one here. So for, can I have a motion and a second to move item 7A to the council agenda?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to move item 7B to the council agenda?
So moved.
Moves.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to move item C to the council agenda?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And 7D, can I have a motion and a second to move 7D to the council agenda?
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And moving on to street and alley, we'll have some discussion about the 2023 street resurfacing program, not to exceed $350,000. Patrick, would you like to discuss that?
Yeah, this is the general street paving program that I had mentioned earlier with the levy funds. Of course, it doesn't encompass every street that we do. There are some rebuilds, there are some water lines put in and we rebuild the street, that kind of thing. So those things are, elsewhere in the budget, but this is just the general paving. And the engineer wanted to get this together. Last year, we did this and had it out for bid first week of December. And then with, hopefully those following last year, those returns came in the beginning of January, and then we were able to award. So we want to try that again this year and see how it looks. I will say that, we reserve the right to not take it to the Board of Control and to resubmit and try it again later. When I'm talking with builders and contractors and people in the business of designing and building things, what they're experiencing currently are situations where in the bid, people are uncertain 90 days from now, 180 days from now, what the cost of anything will be. Certainly they can bid it with contingency, but even that isn't taking into account the magnitude of the change that's occurring with materials and labor. So we're seeing a lot of bids that are coming in way high, so that they've covered as much as they possibly can think of as far as what this project could cost. So one of the recommendations to us was try it, see how it goes. If you feel that, if the engineer feels that the number is compatible with what we have experienced in the past, great, lock it in. But if it's something that's not, you may want to wait a little bit for the economic picture to clear a bit before we go lock something in. Throwing that out there, that those are discussions that we're having.
Is there not a concrete shortage? According to the school, they laid the flooring on the two new schools. Then
Yes, I'm not sure in their particular situation, you may know more in that regard. In concrete overall, that's one of the issues. We talked to the cement contractors, and we're booked all the way through next year with the limited supply that we got.
Okay, any further discussion, any questions for them? I'll move that we put this on the council agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. And I'll take a vote to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll start the next meeting shortly.
I think that was mine. I'm like splitting up.
I'm actually listening.
Now call to order the city council meeting of October 24th, 2022. The time is.
Hold on.
I'll start over.
Thank you.
Everybody ready? Yes. Now call to order the city council meeting of October 24th, 2022. The time is 8:43 PM. Opening prayer, Jamie.
All right. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you this hour asking for your blessing and help as we are gathered together. We pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of joy and enthusiasm. Give us the desire to find ways to excel in our work. Help us to work together and encourage each other to excellence. We ask that we would challenge each other to reach higher and farther to be the best that we can be. We ask this in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you please call the roll?
Member Warren?
Here.
Member Schroyer?
Here.
Member Volt?
Here.
Member Orr? Here. Member Matheny?
Here.
Member McLeister?
Here.
6 present. Member Wyrick is absent.
Motion to excuse member Warwick.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, can I have a motion and a second to approve as presented minutes of September 12th, September 19th, September 26th, and October 3rd? The Planning Commission meetings from August 3rd and August 30th, and the Q3 September finance report.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, at this time, members of the public wishing to address city council may do so. Each speaker will be granted 5 minutes. Comments may be made on any topic under city authority, and for tonight are not limited to the items on the agenda. The rules for speaking will appear on both screens. This will serve as the only warning for everyone in attendance. Any violation of the rules will result in objection from the premises. Anybody wishing to speak tonight?
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. On the agenda for council's September 26, 2022 meeting, there was a listing of upcoming meetings scheduled for October. At the conclusion of that September meeting, Council President Stroyer read aloud that October scheduled meetings with meetings on the 3rd, 10th, 17th, and 24th. Ultimately, the meetings scheduled for October 10th and October 17th were canceled on or before September 28th. The following week at the October 3rd, 2022 meeting, Committee of the Whole meeting, there was no mention that half the month's meeting schedule had been canceled. For at least the last 8 years, the city's agenda center was a place to check for meetings either scheduled or canceled. For example, the agenda center lists the following meeting cancellations for 2022. Special city council meetings on February 1st and 2nd were canceled. The March 4th, 2022 CIC meeting had a time change. The Planning Commission meeting scheduled for February 2nd was moved to February 9th, and the May 4th, July 6th, September 7th meetings were listed as canceled. 5 ZBA meetings scheduled for January 25th, February 22nd, March 22nd, April 26th, and July 26th were all canceled. And these were all listed on the agenda center. For 3 days prior to the scheduled October 10th, 2022 council meeting, I looked at the city's agenda center but found no cancellation notice. I later discovered that council had canceled half of its meetings for the month of October, and that this had been announced in what is called a council bulletin, dated September 28th. I became familiar with council bulletins earlier this year and found that they were simply a summary of the actions of city council meetings. Why wasn't I able to learn of a meeting cancellation in the city's agenda center? I wonder, given that council canceled half of October's meeting schedule, can citizens expect that members of city council will receive only half of their monthly salary? Why couldn't at least 4 members of council show up for those 2 council meetings to avoid the cancellation of city business? If there were concerns that the ZBA meeting on Monday the 17th would run more than 3 hours that it actually ran, then the Monday council meeting could have been scheduled for Tuesday. The cancellation of the October 10th, 2022 council meeting also resulted in the elimination of the public's opportunity to speak on any topic. The agenda that came out on Friday night for tonight's meeting limited topics to agenda only. Then, early today, an amended agenda was posted to restore the public's right to speak on any topic. Why was this notification delayed? The actions of this council are not the kind of representation that is supportive of our democratic ideals. Lastly, I would like to state that the publication titled North Canton Issue 12 Frequently Asked Questions that appears on the city's website goes beyond providing unbiased factual information to North Canton voters and instead has evolved into illegal campaign literature in support of Issue 12. Such campaign activities by a municipality are prohibited by Ohio state law. Further, the creation and publication using the pretense of frequently asked questions format on the city's website violates the Ohio Revised Code, which prohibits the use of city monies to influence the outcome of an election. I respectfully ask that the issue 12 frequently asked questions be removed immediately. Lastly, I have championed this for many, many years. First of all, I applaud the in-depth analysis of the city's shortcomings that was presented. I would like a copy, Catherine, of your presentation. What was it, 50 failures of the city? And I appreciate your candor. And I'm sure over the last 10, 15 years, I spoke out on those issues. And what do I get from up here? Berated, trashed, discredited. So I appreciate the honesty. And lastly, the goals that you've set aside for yourself are undermined by the city's insistence that we maintain a 1.5% income tax rate. It serves no purpose. We have no property to entice business that is overly concerned about that. We're the lowest income tax rate in the entire county. We should be raising the income tax to 2% because we're shorting citizen residents for more paved streets, sidewalks, and I could go on and on.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address council tonight? Okay, moving on to old business. Ben, would you please read ordinance 65-2022?
An ordinance amending Chapter 705, designated outdoor refreshment area of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton to reflect recent changes in state law.
Okay, ordinance and rules.
How about community and economic?
Did I pass that for?
No, sorry.
Oh, Daryl, community economic.
This is the second reading of our DORA legislation amendments, ordinance amendments. We're amending 3 sections, 70501, 70503, 70504. These are technical changes. Probably the most significant is that the DORA boundaries now have addresses, and that's referenced in the language. The other changes are just routine housekeeping. I think we substitute glass for plastic or cup or something, so we're pretty fair shape. So, any questions? Just before we go, I did have an opportunity to talk to Member Orr's, one of his friends, one of his many friends, not just one. Yeah, you have a friend. But it was interesting because he attended the the Main Street Festival for the first time. Lives down in Cordelia. And he said, you know, the door, it was a great event. And he liked the door part. He just said he didn't really understand it. But he said, what a great event it was to bring the community together.
Mhm.
And I thought that was a cogent comment from somebody who probably doesn't follow municipal affairs. But he said, we don't have a lot of that stuff and we should do more of it. So he liked the door, he liked the event. And so I think we're maybe on a good path.
And I heard the same thing about the New Berlin Fest. So
So,
great events that
Great
this policy works to bring in.
yes.
So
So if there aren't any other questions or comments, I'll make a motion that we adopt the second reading of ordinance 65-22.
Second.
All in favor?
I
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you read ordinance 72-2022?
An ordinance to approve and adopt current replacement pages to the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton.
All right, there's about, I think, 7 or 8 of them. It's basically housekeeping, it's from lights on a truck, so moving vehicles to, methods of conducting bingo game publications and stuff of that nature. We share this code, we've gotta put our own codes on it. I understand, so. This is the second reading, I thought it was the third, but I got it with committee.
Adopt.
To adopt it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business. Ben, would you please read ordinance 74-2020?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton to enter into a net profits agreement and an easement agreement with Unison Wireless US LLC for the sale of the income stream produced from the cell tower lease agreement affecting property located at 8901 Pleasantwood Northwest, North Canton, Ohio 44720, and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Okay, Jamie, from the formerly rubbish utilities.
might still be rubbish depending on who you ask. But yeah, so we talked about this at a previous committee meeting. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to get meaningful money now from a revenue stream that would be stretched out over a number of years. Unison would be a great partner with this. They are a large player. I mean, this is exactly the type of thing that they do, and we'd be good to move forward. And so unless there's any objections or any further discussion,
That's on the water tower.
it is on top of the water tower. Yes, that's correct. So I would make a motion that we adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. And can I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 74-2022 under the suspension of the rules?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Moving on, Ben, would you please read ordinance 75-?
An ordinance authorizing the appropriation of funds of the city of North Canton and related one-time permanent transfer of monies for the period beginning January 1, 2022 and ending December 31, 2022.
Finance.
Okay, we talked about this earlier, and we're just moving some different monies around from street lighting, economic development, transfers in and out, the COVID relief fund, and then parks expansion, totaling $4,375. No other questions? I move to adopt.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to adopt 75-2022 under suspension of the rules?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read ordinance 76-2022?
An ordinance authorizing the vacation of one, all of a 10-foot wide alley between 415 Portage Street Northwest and the associated garage to the south. 2, all of an 11-foot wide alley between 401 Portage Street Northwest and 341 Portage Street Northwest. And 3, all of an 11-foot wide alley between 337 Portage Street Northwest and 329 Portage Street Northwest, located within the corporate limits of the city of North Canton.
Okay, we discussed this earlier. Was the conversation okay with his address that matched up with the map? He was tired, it was confirmed. Everything's okay on that?
Yes, he was asking why his address didn't appear in the title, and it's because the frontage of his property doesn't actually touch the alley.
That makes sense. I move that we adopt this reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on. I have a motion and a second to suspend Council Rule 23 in order to consider all items from the immediately preceding committee of the whole meeting, except for those before the Community and Economic Development Committee without a formal committee report.
So moved. Second.
So since we had a committee of the whole meeting, usually if you have this before, we didn't have a committee report, it's just coming forward directly from it. Okay, so I have
Except
the motion
for the items that were on
to-
Daryl's.
Except for, yeah, the Community and Economic Development.
I seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Ben, would you please read resolution 77-20?
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission, authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and declaring the same to be an emergency.
It's really procedural, and we just need to move forward to make sure we're on the ballot. I move to adopt.
Story seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 77-2022 under suspension of the rules?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read ordinance 78-2022?
An ordinance approving and adopting the extension of an alternative method for apportioning the Stark County Undivided Local Government Fund for 2023 through 2027, authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton to execute said agreement and declaring the same to be an emergency.
We talked about this in whole, down about 0.2%. Writing it out.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I have a motion and then a second to adopt ordinance 78-2022 under suspension of the rules?
Motion and.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read resolution 79-2022?
A resolution adopting the solid waste management plan for the Stark Tuscarawas Wayne Joint Solid Waste Management District.
Jamie, utilities.
What, no rubbish?
It's
So,
For that.
It's ended.
Somebody's got-
there we go. So we just discussed this. This is the, the Joint Solid Waste District plan that is required that we adopt this or one of our own, or join in with it, I should say. So I move that we adopt.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read ordinance 80-2022?
An ordinance amending various provisions of Chapter 155 Personnel Regulations of the codified ordinances of the City of North Canton to modify various personnel rules and regulations and the titles and compensation levels of certain personnel.
David?
So Ms. Alaback discussed this in the committee of the whole meeting. This is raising the cap on the positions 8.7% based on the government's cost of living increase that was announced the first part of October. It's also increasing the uniform allowance, adding different position titles in there. She did an excellent job explaining that. I don't believe there were any questions during the committee meeting. Are there any now?
Nope.
No.
I make a motion that we adopt
Second.
ordinance 80-2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read ordinance 81-2022?
An ordinance amending Chapter 137 Department of Police of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton, specifically Section 137.04 Personnel, in order to increase the authorized number of police patrolmen and full-time dispatchers.
This was also discussed in the committee meeting. This is changing the number of police officers that Chief Kemp can have, adding SRO officers. And I think that we covered that completely. Are there any questions to changing that? Raising the cap? Okay, I make a motion to adopt ordinance 81-2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read resolution 82-2022?
A resolution to acknowledge the rates and fees utilized to establish the budget for the 2023 fiscal year.
Great presentation. Patrick, you were right. So different from so many years that we've been through this. And I think it really allowed people to ask questions ahead of time and not just look at those bottom numbers that people used to focus on and look at it from kind of an overall perspective and where we want to see the city going. You still have time to ask questions. We'll be reading this 3 different times. So at this point, if there are any other questions, I move to adopt the first reading.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read ordinance 83-2020?
An ordinance authorizing appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures and related one-time permanent transfers of monies made to various funds for the period beginning January 1st, 2023 and ending December 31st, 2023.
All right, Stephanie.
I got ahead of myself on which one. So so the last one was for rates and fees, and then this one is about presentations in the budget. So I move to adopt.
Second, quick question. Excuse me. Since they're related to a one-time permanent transfer of money, that mean we can only do it one time?
Each one of these listed, may I? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Each one of these listed, so from general fund, we're in the budget, we're transferring $2,975,000, and each one of those funds are receiving what we listed. So the fire fund is receiving $550,000, EMS fund is $100,000, the street fund is $600,000, and the capital improvements fund is $1,725,000. Those are permanent transfers. That money is going to be transferred into those funds and spent out of those funds. The temporary advances is the $300,000 that we will need to advance from general fund for the Dogwood Pool House project. It's the other share of the grant for that project. So it's a reimbursable grant. So we need to advance the money, pay the bills, send it in for reimbursement. When we receive the reimbursement, we'll return. That's why it's a temporary advance.
And then if you need any more money, you'll have to bring it up.
It has to come back to council. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second to adopt.
I believe you already.
You have a motion,
Okay.
we now have a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Ben, would you please read ordinance 84-2020?
An ordinance authorizing the Director of Administration to advertise and receive bids and authorizing the mayor, upon Board of Control approval, to enter into a contract for the 2023 street resurfacing program at a cost not to exceed $350,000 and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Thanks, Ben. This is the 2023 resurfacing program. Again, doing it a little early to give them flexibility. Just discussed it. Move that we adopt.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. What's that? Oh, yeah. Okay, department reports. Patrick?
Does anyone need emergency?
Emergency.
Oh, yes, sorry. Well, this,
Suspension of the rules was not requested because it's contingent on the budget passing.
gotcha,
So it does have an emergency clause,
Okay,
but
but we're not
I was asked
exercising
to
okay.
Okay,
move it with the budget.
that makes sense. Okay. All right,
Mr. President,
yes.
I'd like to yield my time to the distinguished mayor of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Arroyo. President Arroyo, council. My thoughts on tonight is what we heard was I think a very thorough explanation about open government, business, and administration. And as Ms. Farina presented her program on human capital, right, the words were, our focus of this budget is personnel. It's that key element that plays into us delivering exceptional and excellent services. What I'm very thankful for is the personnel that we have is this team over here, who, for the last several months, started putting this budget together. Meeting individually with all our leaders in our different departments, then bringing that to you, council, for your voice and your questions and consideration for that. So we have that key personnel, which we're very thankful for. And, you know, my thoughts are on this. Times and conditions change so rapidly that we must keep our aim constantly focused on the future. And along with that, I love this one quote by Walt Disney: progress is impossible without change. And what you heard tonight was change and progress. And that's what we're working for. And Mr. Osborne, I think you did hit a point there on those 50 items, you know, that Ms. Farina presented. And yes, you probably have brought those to the attention of council before. But I say that as a credit to you. But we do have a council here and administration that action is part of that's what we're doing. And there isn't a day that doesn't go by at our city administration that we're not resolving an issue for someone, finding the right answer or getting them in contact with the right people to handle their situation or their concern. So again, you know, times and conditions have changed, folks, and they have been rapidly happening. And that's what we have been trying to do over these last 3 years since I've been in office. And I know I made some promises along the way, but I want those promises kept. And one of those was for supporting our schools and having our school resource officers, because our community expects it. And I believe our parents and our students expect to have a safe learning environment. But that's just one thing. They covered so many other things here tonight. But again, progress is impossible without change. And that's what's happening here. Folks, you're part of that change, and I'm part of that. But we have the right personnel in place right here with the leadership team. And I can't thank them enough for preparing the mayor's budget in such a timely fashion. And I guess the bottom line, and I'll close with this, that careful and critical examination of this budget is before you, has been presented before you. And I can't thank you enough. Again, I know I've said it 3 or 4 times, but this is probably the most careful and critical examination of a budget that I've ever been a part of in my time here with the city of North Canton. And I appreciate the council's input, the questions and the considerations and concerns that you have for us to go forward in the future. So I'm very confident that what we have today is a great plan for 2023. And as you know, it is a living document, and there are going to be times where we're going to update and change things as we go along. But with that being said, human capital plan was an exceptional presentation. And what you have before us again, I think, was a great demonstration of what open government is.
and what it means to run city with a business sense, but have the administration people in place to make the decisions for the right reasons, right time, for the right cause. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Gina?
I just want to touch on the quarterly report, just a couple of the things you can see. Our interest rate is, of course, increasing as long as everyone else in your personal lives. It's good for the investment side of it, slowly creeping up. Where Star Ohio is at 2.99, the highest it's been in a really long time. And our money market account is at 0.70. We remain 83% invested. In our overall portfolio, I did list for you on the bottom of page 5, our market value, 16, almost 0.7 million that we have in the portfolio. And our estimated interest income is around 270,000 for that portfolio. Our income tax is, again, as I said earlier, it's still up 12%, reporting at 12%, and I believe we're even higher this month, 12.8%, so it continues to climb. Normally, October is the month if you had extensions or businesses that have extensions, it's October. And so since we're a month behind with Rita, we'll have those more final numbers in November. I know we're closing out year end, but we wait for that third quarter to end as well. So. Oh, and then along with the quarterly reports, listed online was the check register, the quarterly check register, the month revenue report, fund balance, all of those, 68 pages I think were attached. And it's available on the city's website finance page as well if you need to access it.
All right, thank you. Ben?
I just want to quickly touch on the rental registration program, which you all enacted earlier this year. Takes effect January 1st, and Patrick has been kind enough to let me continue to assist on. Next week, we are sending letters to 950 properties that we have identified as properties we believe will be required to register under this program as a sort of heads up that this is coming. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that in case you start getting calls as a result of these letters.
Could you send a copy of it?
Okay. Thanks, Ben. Wayne, you're not on here. Would you like to comment?
No report, thank you.
Okay.
No, just can't believe we're at the last week of October here. It's going into November. We're gonna have community retreat, I think this weekend, right? Those of you in should know, come out of that stage. I think I wanted to just say something else on staffing. Once we get through the budget, I don't want to be presumptuous, saying once we pass and everything, even though it doesn't, start until next year, you may see us starting recruiting a little earlier. As long as we know that it's been passed, it isn't, recruiting's not a fast process. We got to start the pipeline. We got to start putting ads out there and networking, and people need to give notice and things like that. So we'll get it started early.
Jim, you're over there. Any comments from?
This is Jim's first meeting.
It's been a pleasure, and we worked really hard on the budget, and I just really appreciate letting me have my input.
Thank you. And then has everybody had a chance to welcome Jenny?
Welcome, Jenny.
Hello, my name is Jenny. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
All right, let's go to council reports. Start with Ward 1, Jamie.
All right, thank you. And actually, I wanted to thank Gina, Jim, Patrick, and Catherine. Great presentation. Also, more importantly, want to thank you guys for the time that you took with us all individually. I know I can speak for myself. That was time very well spent. Certainly a learning curve when it comes to the budget. So I very much appreciate what you guys shared and the presentation tonight. And I think that it's a testament to the fact that, at least I'd like to think, and I think everybody in here would like to think that, and I think we do have a high level of service that we give to our residents. And I look forward to seeing the plans that you guys have presented tonight enacted, because I think that takes the bar only higher. So that's all I had tonight. I'll pass back to Ward 2.
Oh, David.
So as personnel and safety, I get the fun part of announcing some things that have taken place the last month and bringing up some names of some of those valuable assets, those employees that make the difference for our community. So first one on the list is Sam Bacon, was one of the recipients of the 2022 Legacy Award. Award is given to honor the effort that individuals gave during their career in the area of fire prevention and education. That was given by the Stark County Fire Prevention. Thank you, Sam, for your contribution. The next one was on October 12th, Officer Patrick Lewis received a Lifesaver Commendation ribbon from Chief Kemp for his actions taken during a call late in September. It was kind of a scary thing. Responded to a Price Park call, a person who had possibly fallen into the pond. Upon arrival, he did find an elderly female clinging to the concrete base of the gazebo. Temperature that morning was about 40 degrees, and patient couldn't summon the strength to move, and Officer Lewis quickly removed his gun belt and other things so that he could enter the water and help this individual get out. So thank you, Officer Lewis, for stepping up and being that person at the right place at the right time to help that individual. He's been a full-time officer with North Canton for a little over 7 years. He was a member of the Canton Regional SWAT team, and it spent 6 years in the Marine Corps. So valuable asset for police department. And the last one, Chief Kemp and Sergeant Buzzard had the honor of presenting 3 North Canton police officers with a 6-star 30-year pins. 30 years. That's something to say about longevity within the community and serving on our police department. I think that even goes back to community within those individual departments. So, Officer Randy, and correct me if I pronounce these incorrectly, Randy Mance, Officer Charles Manley, Maley, I knew that, and Officer Michael Foltz. And they all received their stars in front of friends and family and fellow officers. Devotion to law enforcement and 30 years is something to be congratulated. So that's what I had to report, and I will never mispronounce his name again. Haley.
And 3, Stephanie.
Okay, Jamie, I was like, just can copy everything that you just said, so I won't repeat. But just thank you. The way we did things tonight was just so different, and giving everybody that opportunity to look for the last couple of weeks, month, and the work that went into it was just so refreshing, and it just gave you that overall view of where we're heading. And before we just, oh gosh, we just looked at little details, and that is not our job. It's to make sure that we're moving forward in a strategic, analytical way. So thank you for giving us that ability to do that.
Move forward, John.
Again, Catherine, thank you so much. The administration, thank you so much. Catherine, you used the word investing in our people. It's not an expense, it's an investment. By doing that, so much farther. Ward 4, nothing was really mentioned about this, and I knew it was on the thing to do. The Whitworth baseball field looks great. Hopefully they'll solve some of that water damage and stuff around there. It looks beautiful. Football team stayed away from it, but it looks really good. Again, thanks to the
John, that was another layer of onion. We got pulled back and realized how mismanaged the effort was and with people involved at that time. So yeah, unfortunately, it took us, all these years later to rectify it, but by gosh, it is, and it will be used, John.
It is very well used. You'd be surprised who uses it. Besides the church leagues, little Y leagues. You'd really be, if you do a walk in the parks, and we have great parks, you'd be, the kickball league was, balls here, kickballs here, but the softball that goes on in our fields and stuff of that nature, it's really amazing. The number of people using the pickleball courts, it's great. It's really a great day. That's my report. Thank you all.
Daryl.
3 items. I know the hour's late, try to be brief. Give me a thumbs up. First of all I want to extend congratulations to Finance, Director of Administration, management team. This was arguably the best budget process and presentation I've ever participated in. Going back to 1981.
Thank you.
I think it's, to echo Stephanie, I think our job is to align the budget with our public policy, which was done tonight. It's very clear what our objectives are, where we want to go, based on where we've been over the last 60 months. Absolutely terrific. We did talk about taxes tonight. And Mr. Osborne has suggested that we raise the income tax about 1.5%. And I would be the first to argue that is terribly unwise. Because any business that is not anchored in this community will decamp to non-tax communities. Plain Township, Jackson, Lake. If you want to put an exclamation point on that, look at the growth of Belden Village and contrast it to the city of Canton, raising its income taxes over the years, from 1.75 to 2 to 2.5. They hollowed out their economies because professionals could work in Jackson Township for free. Something to think about. Now, I was terribly struck as Mr. Osborne raised the question on issue 12. I have this flyer here tonight for easy reference. And Mr. Osborne said that the city's fact sheet was biased. It wasn't factual. And in fact was illegal. Well, I think it's important that the record reflect that the fact sheet was reviewed by legal counsel. It is legal. Number two is, I am holding a particular document in my hands that purports to be from responsible citizens who are unnamed. Who are these responsible citizens? And are the representations made on the flyer, in fact, accurate? And the reality is, they're not. The hour is late, and I won't go through these items point by point. But they're absolutely specious. They're false. I don't really know how a publication like this promotes civic discourse, particularly respectful city discourse. You either have the facts or you don't. And this doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. My turn. Just want to say thank you for the depth that administration and finance and everybody involved went into. The presentation's phenomenal, but what you did behind the scenes to come up with all those numbers and everything is also equally impressive. You're running it like a business. It wasn't before. That's a huge step for a municipality to enter into that category. So I greatly appreciate that. I think everybody does. As far as issue 12 goes, I want to mention this. I find it ironic that people come to us and come to the city, complain and say, you're sleeping on this issue. You're trying to pull one over on us. We had a charter committee review this, public meetings there. We had 4 public meetings. We're not allowed to campaign for this. we can't, as a city, throw money and things behind this. So it is ironic that people ask us what's going on and then we can't deliver that. So I find that a little bit frustrating. You know, what better way do we reach out to the voters and get our information out? The news media is dead. They don't cover anything we do. Why can we not put together a frequent asked questions on our website? That's just silly to say that would be illegal. And again, reviewed by legal as well. So on a personal note, at the New Berlin Festival, I don't know that we talked about that until now, did we? I was probably in the top 10 of the sausage sauce. So I just want to brag.
Are you campaigning?
Sorry, I might use that actually. That'd be great. But that's all I've got. Thank you, administration and finance. Final call for new business. Okay, the meeting calendar coming up. We're going to, let's see, November 7th, we're going to have a committee of the whole. November 14th, city council meeting. November 21st, committee of the whole.
Could we, President,
Yeah,
could we look at the agenda for the 28th?
I was just going to say that.
Could we put that on the 21st?
Yeah, we can
And wrap
double
the budget
those
up.
two.
Still had 3 readings, but, you know, we have to get it in place and I'd rather not run it to the end in case something happens.
Okay, so on the 21st, we'll have a committee of the whole and a city council. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
And then the following week, we still have the organizational meeting on the 1st anyway, so.
Will the 21st be our last meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, anything else? I will make a motion to adjourn.
And then December 5th, you guys scheduled that hearing.
Yes, December.
Ben, could you briefly go over, very briefly, as a council person, what I can or cannot say about issue 12 or any other issue?
So Wayne can certainly correct me,
Yeah.
but it is my understanding that
Okay.
you as a private elected representative can take a stance, but the institution of the city may not take a stance.
That's accurate, yeah. The institution of the city, whenever they release any sort of data about the issues, they can give the facts, but they can't campaign one way or the other. They can't tell you how to vote. They can't say how they'd like you to vote. It's just, here are the facts, here's what's at issue. Here's, for example, in the publication, the question was, what did council discuss when they were talking about it? It didn't advocate a position, but it stated, here are the issues that caused council to bring this to the public. You can do that as the city, but as the city, we can't say, vote yes, vote no.
Even if they know that I'm a council person?
Even if they know that you're a council person, you would say, it's your opinion as a voter, which way that you like, and you can give some fact behind it. But if they're saying, hey, on behalf of the city, John, what do you think the city would have us do? You can't say yes or no, you just have to give
I have been
facts.
saying, as a council person, I cannot give you, but as John or citizen of North Canton.
Perfect.
As Matt had said, we couldn't, not would spend, we can't spend money, we have to spend time. You need a motion to adjourn?
I do.
Motion, I'll second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Good job. Yeah.
I'll be